20. The dripping darkness added to the sense of espionage and secrecy. No wind blew across the open field where the diverse band of humans had camped, and the gentle misting rain obscured the tall trees beyond, cloaking the encampment further in an air of conspiracy. Within the darkness, vague shapes moved stealthily on missions of equal urgency and secrecy, each one avoiding, as if by choreographed movement, the presence of the others. In the darkness beyond the circle of grass marking the camp zone, the forest teemed with a secret movement of its own, the Tatate creeping closer and closer to the human zone. Had the desk guards been alert in their security positions on the perimeter, they would have sensed the advance of the Tatate. They were busy with other matters. The moment darkness had fallen, changing the gloom of daylight fading under low clouds to a Stygian blackness, the desk sections had begun to move. They did not move fast, and they did not move far, but began to gradually slip away from their established positions to rally around the command bunker. Takuda had left his position as soon as it was full dark. He was gone before the glowing shape of the LAM pilot, seen through the IR scanner, scrambled up the side of the LAM and took his place in the cockpit. George Bousteau, the desk headquarters clerk, watched the glow of the internal power supply begin to flow into the mech's control, propulsion, and weapon systems. He reported the activity to Takuda, who was shielded from the prying eyes of the LAM's IR sensors. Not only was his form masked by the rising bulk of the bunker, but like every other member of the desk team, he was wearing an IR suppression suit. The area where the human survivors was camped was several hundred meters wide by 6 kilometers long. The dropship and the Teledyne's lifeboat had grounded at one end, just short of the trees that barred further passage. The security arrangements they'd established put the desk headquarters some 500 meters behind the dropship hulk, with the two light sections spread out in a wide V behind it. The weapons section had been separated from the others, held near the headquarters as a reserve force. Security for the dropship had been provided by the mercenaries and the ship crews. Takuda had not deemed it the best possible arrangement, but the plan had suited the various personalities involved. Now the arrangement suddenly became an asset. The topography of the area permitted anyone on the dropship to see only the desk command bunker. Even the LAM, positioned near the forward edge of the dropship's port wing, could see only the desk headquarters and the position of the western section. But it could not see both with the same accuracy. The result was that Brian Seagroves, sitting tense in the cockpit of his Phoenix Hawk, had a clear IR signature from the command position, but only a faint blue blur from the section area. He could see the heat signature from the entrance of the headquarters, but Yura had made sure that the bunker's stove was going full bore. The heat that radiated from the mouth of the bunker virtually blocked out any faint IR noise from the surrounding area. Even Bousteau, lying on top of the bunker itself, was invisible, and anyone moving along the eastern side of the ridge that marked the center of the position would be equally hidden. Takuda was in a quandary about the operation. If this had been a standard desk mission, winning would have meant the elimination of every mercenary around the mechs. They would leave no survivors. But this was not standard. Takuda had no desire to kill all the mercenaries. They had done nothing to earn such retribution. There had only been the report that Vost was planning to break the mechs out of the hull and make a run for the enclaves. They'd also been warned that the LAM was to destroy the command bunker, but that seemed logical. Takuda would have done the same if given the opportunity, but he had no wish to destroy the mechs and their pilots. Takuda knew only too well that he would need them in his dealings with the enclaves. Thus he had ordered his people to use non-deadly force. If deadly force became necessary, only Takuda would give the order. The attacking force consisted of the two light teams commanded by Arsenault and Knight. Sine stayed at the CP with the heavy section. From there, she would be able to direct the SRM, loaded with Inferno missiles, at any heavy target that appeared, She also had Miranda and his heavy rifle available to eliminate individual targets. The heavy team was the only one armed with deadly weapons. The other DEST members were carrying trank guns. Approaching the starboard side of the dropship, the DEST team fanned out. Takuda and the headquarters section were in the center, with Knight and his section to the right, Arsenault and his to the left. They crept through the grass, scanning the target with their IR sensor goggles. One glowing life form stood out clearly against the black of night. It was Reston Bannon, master and commander of the late jumpship Teledyne, standing guard. He was seated on top of the dropship, his legs dangling into the gaping wound that had been cut in the ship's side to release the lamb. His guard position was most awkward for the assaulting DEST. Takuda signaled Knight to take Bannon out of the equation. Holland moved silently to scale the nose of the dropship. The rest of the DEST team watched her creep over the battered ogive and along the top of the hull. Perhaps it was some water on the hull, or maybe a spot of lubricant left by one of the mercenaries during the cutting operation. Whatever it was, her felt-soled shoes suddenly made a noise. Not much of one, and not one that would have been noticed during normal activity. But on this night, with no wind to mask the sounds, the slight squeak of her boots on the titanium alloy skin screeched like a banshee. Bannon twisted to face her. Before he could grasp the situation, before he could open his mouth to give the alarm, Holland reacted. In one swift gesture, she brought the trank rifle from its carry position on her back, leveled the weapon, and fired 2 quick shots. One would have been enough for the jump ship skipper. The second was just insurance. The soft thunk-thunk of the rifle echoed through the gaping cavity of the dropship's cargo bay, unheard by the workers on the deck 10 meters below. From his post on the outer skin, Reston Bannon had a momentary vision of a figure swathed in black. Then, his vision clouded and he lost control of his muscles. He reached out to brace himself against the skin of the ship, but his arms had lost their ability to respond. He toppled forward into the opening. Holland reached for him to stop his fall, but she was too far away. As if in slow motion, the body of the jump ship's skipper dropped onto the inner cargo deck of the ship. If the reports of the trank rifle had passed unnoticed, the crash of the falling body did not. As Bannon took his dive into the black hole of the cargo bay, Takuda signaled the rest of the DEST team forward, up and running toward the jagged rent in the side of the dropship. They carried their trank guns at the ready. The weapons were best at extremely close ranges, and Takuda knew they would have to get inside the hull of the vessel to have any chance of subduing the mercenaries. Inside the hull, the thud of the falling body was amplified as the sound rebounded from the metal interior. Vost, halfway up the right side of the Panther, froze as he reached for the next handhold. He'd seen the body dropping out of the corner of his eye. The form of Reston Bannon now lay curled beside the left foot of his mech. Then he heard the pounding feet of the charging DEST team. The game was up, and he knew it. "We're out of here!" he shouted as he scrambled toward the Panther's cockpit. Below him, the dark interior bloomed with light. Diomoso Panda was standing with his back to the jagged opening in the hull. He sensed, rather than saw, the DEST team charge across the open ground and under the wing of the dropship. He had his stern-snocked auto pistol holstered on his right hip, and he drew it as he turned to face the darkness. Behind him, the interior lighting system flared into life, bathing the area around the opening in brilliant blue clarity. Panda saw a black figure silhouetted in the glare. Without hesitation, he drew the heavy pistol, raised it to face level, and fired. The flash of the pistol erased any remaining night vision the technician might have had. The dark figure went down. Inside the cargo hold, The mech warriors were settling into the command seats of their mechs. Hands raced in well-accustomed gestures across the master switches and toggles. The cockpit recorders, sensors, and displays bloomed to life. Down below, technicians drove heavy mauls into the last of the restraining shackles. The mechs were free, but they still did not move. None of the pilots would engage their drive systems until the entire checklist was completed. Even if the pilot had just done a third-level diagnostic and maintenance check, he would follow the entire initiation sequence. There were no old, bold pilots. The desk team came pouring through the gap in the hull, their trank rifles discarded in favor of lasers. Seeing Yura go down under the blast of a heavy pistol, Takuda knew that the mercenaries were playing for keeps. He, too, would have to up the ante. He warned his people to be careful, still hoping to avoid having a pile of dead when the attack was over. Then Arsenault and his team scrambled across the dropship's starboard wing and rolled through the opening into the brilliant light of the cargo hold. Inside the Panther, Vost's cockpit instruments glowed green. Twisting the mech's torso to the right, he searched for possible targets. With nothing but a PPC and an SRM launcher, it would be disastrous for him to fire in the confined space of the cargo hold. His weapons made the Panther a powerful mech, but at ranges of only a few meters, he'd have been better off with machine guns. He saw Pesht and his javelin begin to move away from the bulkhead where the mech had been secured. The javelin was in the same situation as the Panther. Its heavy load of SRMs did not make it a good fighting machine in a confined space. But, like the Panther, it could jump clear of the area. The Locusts, however, would have to walk out. One of the desk team was slinking around the feet of the shuffling javelin, a grapple rod for attacking the mech in his hand. Vost thought momentarily of firing his PPC at the figure, then changed his mind. That was Pesht's problem. "Man at your feet," he warned. "Goodall, Frank, get him with your machine guns." Outside the dropship, Seagrove saw the bloom of light and heard the warning. As he triggered the pair of medium lasers on the arms of his lamb, the command bunker erupted in a brilliant ball of white fire. "That'll take care of you, Takuda," he thought. He smiled, but the smile vanished as an inferno missile arced out of the darkness and struck the ground at the feet of the Phoenix Hawk. He felt his heart jump. Out of here, that's what Vost had said. Sounds like a good idea, thought Seagroves. I'd rather be rich than dead. The twin-allied Aviar-Tech 125 jump jets roared into life as another inferno slammed into the ground where the mech had been. "Adios, suckers," whispered Seagroves as the Phoenix Hawk lifted into the air. Inside the cargo area, the streams of machine gun bullets crisscrossed the open area. Bodies, caught in the deadly hail, ricocheted off the bulkheads in a macabre dance. Holly Goodall swung her twin heavy machine guns across the white void, searching for targets. Centered in her crosshairs, she saw the rigid shape of a desk soldier. She squeezed the triggers, taking up the slack. But then she saw that it was Takuda. Making an instant decision, she continued to traverse instead of firing. To her right, she saw Brank's Locust making a similar sweep through the cargo bay, his twin guns stopping on the same target. Without hesitation, Goodall swung her mech's torso as far to the right as it would go, taking a step forward with her left leg to complete the traverse. The cockpit of the other Locust steadied in her targeting crosshairs. She punched the firing button. Standing at the opening of the cargo bay, Vost knew there was nothing he could do here, and he'd only be cut to ribbons if he stayed. Firing the Panther's jump jets, he rose up and out of the combat. On his secondary screen, he saw his techs also making for the woods. Inside the cargo bay, the recumbent body of Reston Bannon vaporized under the searing plasma of the Panther's jump jets. Then the mech was clear of the dropship. Vost hit the ground running, the javelin right behind him. It had taken Pesht one step to center himself in the same opening. Then he had fired the smaller Rawlings jets and lifted out after his commander. The two mechs made contact in the darkness outside. For a moment they contemplated going back to free the locusts, but their calls brought no response. The lights in the cargo hold blinked out. With the Lamb already gaining altitude, Vost called Pesht to his side, and the two mechs began lumbering westward toward the enclaves.